What's this doing here? And why does it have that? It doesn't deserve that. I guess we should talk about it.
Hey, I love you.
I know.
Challengers is hitting theaters this weekend, and this was a movie I was pretty excited for. Like you saw in that intro, it has a 90+% Rotten Tomatoes score. The trailer that we just saw looked decent, and I'm a let down pretty hard. Why is that? Well, it's not because the performances from the actors playing the characters of Art, Patrick, and Tashi, led by Zendaya. No, I think all three actors, actresses, in all form of ages do a very good job telling their character story a bit. And especially Zendaya, I think she's the shining of the three. I think that's also why most people are going to be in theaters. But this movie doesn't have great characters or very even deep and complex characters, on top of a very weird choice of how to tell this story. You go into the beginning of this movie seeing that Art and Patrick, probably in their mid to late 30s, are playing this tennis match at this kind of what ends up being a challenger or just under leveled event. And you kind of are curious how maybe you got there. You see Zendaya's character kind of being in the middle, and I think if the movie decided to, see that as the intro and then flash back to the very beginning when all of them kind of first met with each other and you chronologically worked your way to that point, I think this movie could have worked for me. I think worked really well and told a pretty interesting narrative story. But instead, it flashes back only like 2 weeks and we see Art and Zendaya's where they're at in the world at this point. And then it also flashes back basically to the day the tournament begins, where we see what's going on with Patrick's life. And why this doesn't work for me is because even though later on we are going to get that flashback so where we can see where they met Tashi, how their Tashi kind of created this toxic relationship with both of them and more, the movie tells us all the answers in the very beginning. Without even seeing the trailer, it focuses in on Tashi's scar when we see that Art is kind of struggling and is kind of complaining, or he's dealing with coming back from his own similar injury, a 6-time major champion who is not really has his heart in it, but because Tashi is an individual who can't actually compete anymore, he's competing for her, and her being his coach means he's doing, his heart might not be in it per se, but he's trying what he can to make her happy because this is what she does. She lives through his competition as a later age in life, as husband and wife with a kid who they don't seem to be very much care for. Art maybe more than uh, Tashi, but you get all the pictures of what happens with their story. You get to figure out where Patrick is and seeing that he's struggling living kind of tournament to paycheck, and his life kind of went downhill. So when you go back in time and you see where they start out, you pretty much have the natural conclusion and the whole entire story at hand. So it doesn't feel like you really are earning anything interesting in there. And even points of the movie where they add an interesting element, they kind of spoil it even in that sense because they tell you what's going to happen. So when you see it happen as a flashback, you're like, well, yeah, you already made that reference in the future. I I'm not surprised by this now. Like, oh my goodness, like they bring up the term Atlanta, and it's just like, well, yeah, once you mention it in the future as this thing, it's like I'm not surprised, and it doesn't make that impact when I see it in the past. And that is my main issue with Challengers, is its storytelling and the way it bounces back and forth with time here and there, is you're not getting an actual character arc or character journey for any of these characters because it's laid out for you in the first 15 minutes. And maybe some people will not see that and they will still enjoy this movie and enjoy the performances and everything about it. But for me, it was annoying because there wasn't anything interesting or new that I don't think the trailers didn't show, or that the movie didn't hand out to you on a silver platter in the first 10 or 15 minutes. And so when it drags on for either almost 2 hours or over 2 hours, you kind of just grow tired of the flashbacks jumping back and then the flashing kind of forward, seeing where they are in the match and flashing back and flashing forward. And, some of the shots I thought were really interesting during tennis matches. And I think there's a lot of positives there with the tennis. But then as you get towards the third act, as we're centralizing more and more on the actual match taking place and the stakes that are there for each individual character. Again, stakes that you kind of figured out from the very beginning of the movie. Nothing really changed with that, but you now get a little bit more detail on that. They have some very interesting camera shots that sometimes work and sometimes just don't work. And adding with a score that I was really enjoying the first part of the movie, it just became very overbearing in the second part of the movie. I feel like I'm piling on this movie, and that's just because I feel like it has such great word of mouth in terms of the critic reviews, and I had such high hopes for it, but I found myself more annoyed as I was watching this movie. And like I said in my short review, sometimes you come out of movies and you're wondering, like, how am I so off? What is the consensus opinion? And I'm excited and interested to see what audience scores and the cinema score will be for Challengers, because I don't know if it's going to be as strong and as positive as that critic score. It's showing 91%, but even that, as more critics have seen it recently, has went from like 96, 98 all the way down to 91. I think this movie just does time all wrong. I think it's kind of a misleading advertising campaign. I think it's advertising itself as this big sexy movie, and there are sexy scenes in there, but I don't think you get near enough of what they're advertising. And I'm not somebody who's going in there for that. I want character drama. I want to know how, the different parts of life these characters go through, the ups and the downs. And I feel like I didn't really get that per se. I didn't get to see Art and Tashi kind of rising up as he does win some majors in tennis and see the higher points of their life. I didn't get to see what was Art was like pre, when that injury happened to him. I see only post per se. I didn't see Patrick's kind of struggle, during the years. He only came around whenever it was time to mingle with Tashi or mingle with Art here or there. It just left a lot of areas and nuances with this character and their journeys I felt were missing, and the only things they touched on were things they showed in the very beginning as like points, whether it be a scar, whether it be, Art not winning against an opponent he should beat, but not being too upset about it, but knowing that his wife was really upset about it for those personal reasons, and seeing where Patrick was. So overall, I will give the acting performances and a lot of the camera shots that I did like that were interesting enough of a grade to give this a very high silver, but this was not a great movie for me. And I don't know if I'm just wrong. Tell me in the comments down below if I'm wrong about Challengers. What were some of your favorite things about it if you enjoyed this movie? There's no reason why can hate on people if you went in and enjoyed this movie and you had a good time. I love that for you. But for me, Challengers is probably my biggest disappointment of the year, because I thought this was going to be a great top of the line platinum diamond level movie. And I came out annoyed and just upset, and it gets a high silver. So I'll see you if I do another review here soon. We got the summer movie season box office predictions on the channel, and I'll see you next time. But yeah, that's Challengers.